Senate will please come to order. Good morning. We will have a moment of silence to enjoy the sun coming in the window as we prepare for the snow tomorrow. Well done. I think that's one of the most silent moments of silence we've had. Please rise if you're able for our pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any announcements? Seeing none, we have one bill under Rule 31 for referral, H543, appearing on the calendar for notice affecting the revenues of the state, will be referred to the Committee on Finance. We have a joint resolution to consider at this time, JRS 51. Please listen to the reading of the resolution.
Resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that when the two houses adjourn on Friday, April 5, 2024, it be to meet again no later than Tuesday, April 9, 2024.
Now you've heard the reading of the resolution. The question is, shall the Senate adopt the resolution? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have adopted JRS 51. We now have a handful of House bills for reference. The first being H585, which passed the House on March 27th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H585, an act relating to amending the pension system for sheriffs and certain deputy sheriffs.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Government Operations. We have up for reference H612, which also passed the House on March 27th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H612, an act relating to miscellaneous cannabis amendments.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. We have H630, which also passed the House on March 27th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H630, an act relating to boards of cooperative education services.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Education. We have up for consideration H687, which passed the House on March 28th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H687, an act relating to community resilience and biodiversity protection through land use.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. We have up for consideration H721, which passed the House on March 27th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H721, an act relating to expanding access to Medicaid and Dr. Dinosaur.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Health and Welfare. We have H873, which passed the House on March 27th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H873, an act relating to financing the testing for remediation and the presence of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, in schools.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Education. And we have H880, which passed the House on March 27th. Please listen to the first reading of the bill by title.
H880, an act relating to increasing access to justice and to corporate taxes and fees.
Now you've heard the first reading of the bill is referred to the Committee on Judiciary. That brings us to the orders of the day. And my understanding is we're going to be doing the third readings first. So that would take us to page 1925 of today's calendar. The first bill is S167, an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to education law. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S167, an act relating to miscellaneous amendments to education law.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have passed S167. I'm just checking real quick whether we want to pass over 259 for the moment until the other sponsor comes. Okay. We'll take up S301. S301 has third reading ordered. It's an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S301, an act relating to miscellaneous agricultural subjects.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, you have passed S301. We now have up for consideration S304. S304 is an act relating to Vermont's career and technical education programs. Are there any amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S304, an act relating to Vermont's career technical education programs.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. In my floor report last Friday, there were several excellent questions from the senators from Chittenden Central. Question number one was language including fully participate presented by Senator Baruch, comments by Senator Clarkson and Senator Hewlett. Reading from S304, Section 1, Paragraph 5, we are providing students enrolled in grades 9 and 10 a genuine opportunity to participate fully in pre-tech, exploratory career, and technical courses. First, a very brief summary of pre-tech exploratory programs. These programs are intended as an introduction to all programs at a regional career center for students in the 9th and 10th grade. These programs include applied instruction in core academic subjects and are designed to assist students in career exploration. These programs run an average of 2 hours per day. A little feedback from AOE, and I'm quoting them. This section refers to the responsibilities of the local boards in sending districts. The requirement is assuring that every supervisory union and district statewide is affording access and opportunity to participate to their students. Some CTE centers may already work with SUs and SDs to offer this, but this would ensure equal access to all students regardless of district. Given that most CTE centers are already at capacity, there's obviously much more work to be done for this full rollout. The second question, more of a general question regarding the open meeting laws that apply to AOE's rulemaking process from Senator Bielski. Section 6 of S304 transfers rulemaking authority from the State Board of Education to the AOE and requires the AOE to follow the Administrative Procedures Act rulemaking process in 3 VSA Chapter 25, which requires publication of the proposed rules, public review, and an opportunity for public comment. And very briefly, that process in a nutshell is the agency makes rules, the ICAR, Interagency Committee on Administrative Rules, reviews, then followed by the LCAR, the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules, review. And hopefully this provides a little more insight into the questions which were asked last Friday. And I welcome the full chamber in supporting the Education Committee in supporting S304. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question now is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you're passed S304. We now have up for consideration S310. Third reading was ordered. S310 is an act relating to natural disaster government response, recovery, and resiliency. Are there any amendments? Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you look on page 1926 of today's calendar, there is a very brief amendment with some technical changes to this bill. I explained these last week as part of a larger amendment. This is just these two provisions. The first would make the language in S310 related to death benefits for public works employees, equivalent to the language that was in the BAA. So it's just matching this up with the BAA language. And the second, as I mentioned last week, the bill would ask for a report before the effective date of the bill, which obviously is not workable. So it's just changing 2024 to 2025 so that it happens next year. And that is it. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the senator from Addison? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have amended the bill as offered by the senator from Addison. The question now is, shall the bill pass? Excuse me, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S 310, an act relating to natural disaster government response, recovery, and resiliency.
Now the question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you have passed S 310. We'll now return to the top of the calendar, page 1917, for S 96. The S 96 was referred to the Committee on Government Operations, which considered the bill and recommends that when amended, the bill ought to pass. The bill is then referred to the Committee on Appropriations that also considered the bill and recommends that when amended, the bill ought to pass. Please listen to the second reading of the bill.
S 96, an act relating to privatization contracts.
Now you've heard the second reading of the bill. Now for the report of the committee, Senator from Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is both a labor bill and an accountability bill. What this bill is not is a prohibition on privatization. It seeks to ensure that if privatization of state services is happening, it is happening out in the open and is actually saving the state substantial money because of new and innovative, more efficient solutions and not by exploiting workers, paying them less or offering them less in benefits. Currently, there is a loophole in our privatization law that allows private contracted workers to do the work of state workers without ever triggering the privatization contracts statute, which means that contracted workers are providing the same services right alongside our state workers. And we have no idea if this is actually saving us money or if those workers have the protections that our state employees enjoy. This is a morale issue for our already beleaguered state workers. It undercuts our state employees union, and it may actually cost us more. We just don't know. One place we know that it does cost us more is with the contract with traveling nurses at the Vermont Veterans Home. We heard from our joint fiscal office that it would actually be incredibly difficult to make us a fiscal note for this bill, as there is not a central place that these contracts that are not triggering the privatization language live, and instead are held department by department. And that there is possibly no data about savings, wages, benefits. It just isn't easy to find. And this is because by not triggering the privatization contract statute, they're not held accountable to any of these things. This bill seeks to change that, to ensure that if state work is being privatized, it is held to the requirements of the privatization contract language, that the workers have the same pay, benefits, and protections that a state worker would have, and that the contract actually saves significant money. With and it requires regular review that these contracts are in fact meeting these requirements. In section 1, we amend Title 3 VSA 341 and redefine the privatization contract language. As I said, we heard that currently jobs are being privatized through this loophole in existing language that this section seeks to close. Currently, a real job or employee must be eliminated. And so if the same or similar job is being done with a private contract, it can be done outside this system, as long as the job hasn't eliminated a job or position. We heard from the employees in Reach Up Case Management and in Corrections who testified to the fact that private contractors sit right next to them, doing the same job, often with less training and less oversight, and that this is both a problem for morale of our employees, as well as for the service the users are getting. In section 2, we amend 3 VSA 342, and it's only a small change to this section. In this section, we strike the language spirit and. Previously, the language read that a privatization contract should be certified by the Attorney General if it was not contrary to the spirit and intent of the classification plan. It was unclear and without any definition of what spirit of meant in this context. So we struck it in both places that it was used. And now the law will simply read that the Attorney General shall certify the contract if it is within the intent of the classification plan. This section also lists existing requirements that must be met for a contract and exceptions to those. And I know some of us have heard from the builders and contractors with concern about how this bill will impact their work. And the answer is that it will not. There are two relevant exceptions for their work that exempt them from this contract language. Exemption A, the services are not available within the agency or are such a highly specialized or technical nature that the necessary knowledge, skills, or expertise is not available within the agency. State employees do not currently build roads or buildings, and so the specialized skills that the contractors and builder bring would fall under this exception. And also exception D, the state is not able to provide the equipment, materials, facilities, or support services in the location where the services are to be performed in a cost-effective manner. Again, we don't have the required tools to build roads and bridges, and thus the contractors and builders are also exempted under this provision. That is existing law. We did not change those things. And in section 3, we amend 3 VSA 3, or nope, this is also section 2. It is 3 VSA 343. Some of the requirements for a privatization contract are changed. Currently, there is a 35-day period of consideration. And what we are adding is that during that time, the agencies shall prepare a written statement about the services that are being privatized, the proposed cost savings, the wages to be paid to employees, and the benefits that will be offered. This statement shall be given to the bidder, the collective bargaining representative, and posted publicly. If a contract is to move forward, it must project a 20% cost savings. Currently, in law, it is only 10%. It must pay prevailing state wages for the work being done and must offer similar benefits at a similar cost share that the state employees plan. And it must also meet the state quality standards. If a contract is being privatized, it should be because of new and innovative solutions that will save money and not because workers are being paid less or having their benefits cut at the expense of the quality of service. This bill also tasks the auditor to review these contracts yearly to ensure that they are continuing to meet the requirements set forth in this statute. And if they find that they are not, the contract shall not be renewed. In section 3, there is a report from JFO and the Agency of Green Administration on the fiscal impacts of these changes. The changes to the definition of privatization contract and the changes in requirements for those contracts will go into effect on July 1st, 2025, to give us time to hear from the report and to have it align with a new fiscal year that allows the administration to make whatever changes may be needed to meet the new requirements. This bill, as I said, does not prohibit privatization contracts, but it does assert that the cost savings should not be on the backs of our workers or the quality of our services. The vote in your Government Operations Committee was 5-1-0, and we ask for the Senate to concur.
The bill is then referred to the Committee on Appropriations, which considers the same and recommends that when further amended, the bill ought to pass. For the report of the Committee on Appropriations, Senator from Caledonia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Appropriations Committee is proposing a strike all to this bill. This is not a new issue to some members of the Appropriations Committee. I personally, for full disclosure, was a state employee, and so I've been worked under the contract agreement, but I've also been an administrator. But since I've been in the legislature, there have been several instances where the issue around privatization has come up. And it gets complex. First of all, this bill right now we have a review process for the Attorney General's office on contracts to make sure that they are meeting the existing requirements. This bill will actually sweep in grants as well. And I have received an estimate that we have 13,000 active grants. Many grants go out and we use them very routinely through our appropriations process to support our nonprofit delivery systems. So the difficulty of the workload associated with adding 13,000 grants on top of the contracts for review really presents a significant workload issue. Also, the question about comparable employment or jobs is pretty nuanced. Several years ago, we in fact had a complaint that was filed by the SEA regarding jobs that were done by an organization called Weber, and saying that they were the same as folk rehab jobs. Those, upon review and appeal, the determination was that in fact the two jobs were different and that it was not performing the same functions as a state employee. So what we have is an issue where we have no central collection point for contracts and grants. The Joint Fiscal Office outlined a number of questions that would have to be answered. So what this cycle does is, and I'm going to need a glass of water if I could get one. Is say that we really need to understand what this would do. Back in 2016, we did an analysis. Some of us serve on the boards of nonprofits. I happen to be on a board of a designated agency. And routinely, the concern is the ability to attract workforce at wages that are not competitive for state employment. And so we did an analysis back in 2016 with classified jobs in state government and looked at comparable positions in our community mental health agencies. And the additional compensation to make the wages comparable, thank you, was $43 million. And then, of course, what we have here is basically an overlay of collective bargaining benefits on these organizations. Now, transportation does certainly have to comply with the federal requirements as it relates to wage, but for those of us who serve on transportation, we also know that there's been an emphasis of trying to put business with Vermont small business. And so, yes, major buildings and paving and so forth would all come under those federal wage requirements. But small businesses, particularly in maintenance, to help with brush cutting along the road, clean up after whatever weather events and so forth that take time, would require having to look at wages and benefits that are paid to see if they're comparable. So what we have here is a requirement that a grant as the employer, whatever it might be, would have to provide a comparable wage, provide health, vision, and dental benefits commensurate with what a state employee gets, and do it for 20% less. How that calculus would work, we're really not sure. But also what would be the impact in terms of the community-based organizations that are dependent on the grants and the funding that we send their way. So it was with a great deal of caution that we looked at what was being presented here. This is not new. We had testimony that in fact, there have been efforts to get this legislation passed over the last 5 or 6 years. And so what your Appropriations Committee is doing is to say, we really need to examine all the implications and the collateral impacts. I think for those of us who deal with the budget, we know that a lot of many good benefits and services, in fact, we rely on our community-based organizations to serve those Vermonters. And so to do this would require really a collection, a structure to collect and review to make sure that in fact the benefits, the wages are meeting that target, that in fact that employer could do it for 20% less. And then the question is, well, 20% less of what? Because obviously employers have in state government, the retirement, as we know in the budget, is a very large cost per employee. But also what are the operating costs, which when you're doing a grant or when you're doing a contract and doing an RFP, then you would have to sort out what are those benefits and what are those wages. And obviously, the Agency of Transportation can do that to some extent, but they certainly are not doing it with our small businesses that are providing backhoe services, or when we have maintenance such as the mowing along state roads. And the other part of this is the bill says it applies for contracts that are the same or substantially similar. And some may recollect that we did have a great deal of discussion around a community-based organization providing reach-up case management services. And the budget had proposed, as the reach-up caseload went down, to reduce the number of case managers. The administration, in this case, had proposed terminating the service agreements with our parent-child centers. When the reach-up case management structure was set up, and I know this because I did it, the case management was really connected to where that family or that parent would be getting really the locus of their services. And so for families with young children, home visiting and the parent education and so forth was considered an important part. In the end, the parent-child centers came in, they argued that in fact those service agreements should be continued. In the end, they were not. So I don't know at this point whether there are any reach-up case managers that are under some kind of agreement at this point, but there were back, I think, in 2019, and at that point, those contracts were terminated. The other part here is that it would be services currently or previously provided by state employees. So depending on how far back you go, there's probably not a job or an occupation that would not be covered by a state employee back when we were operating institutions where you would have to have a very varied workforce relative to maintenance, to nutrition, to meal preparation, to whatever. We know that we did have a juvenile facility, Woodside, that was operated by state employees. It was shut down under rather difficult circumstances. This would certainly suggest that you could do a contract to have a provider provide the services to that particular group. And we're in the process of replacing a juvenile facility with discussion around a private operator, some entity that may have expertise in treatment. So obviously this would apply because the state did operate a juvenile facility, and prior to Woodside, for those of us who have been around, we operated the juvenile facility at Weeks School. We operated a very large state hospital in Waterbury. We still operate one. And yes, we are paying more than we want for contract nurses. We're not doing it because we want to as a matter of practice. It's to make sure that we can adequately provide the care. And that phenomenon is not isolated to state employment. We only have to look at our hospitals. We only have to look at our visiting nurses. We only have to look at a variety of healthcare delivery systems that are relying, unfortunately, on contract or agency or traveling health professionals. So it was all that that has led to the recommendation of your committee on appropriations to say this is something that really warrants further examination and analysis before we move forward. We do not want to do something that would have a very detrimental impact on the myriad of service delivery organizations that we have that have been created and that hold public-private or community-based structure that has evolved over the last several decades. And we also would need to know how we would set up this review process, whether in fact, even mathematically, this is a test that could be met in terms of doing everything that would be benefited through the wages and through the benefits and do it for 20% less. We are obviously concerned about allegations of quality of services. And I know that even the term shoddy services was referenced in one document that I had. This is certainly a concern. And it is a concern in terms of if in fact we have an organization, whether it be community-based or whether it's for profit, that in fact is not providing the quality of services that are provided for in the contract, then the irony is that these are state employees that are monitoring on the very performance standards and making sure that in fact the requirements are being complied with. But are obviously, when we're using public funds, we want to make sure that the delivery of the services is at the level that people in this state deserve. So how we would monitor them or where we need to do better is also part of this analysis. And so with all that, and probably that's a lot more background than anyone would ever want, but this is not a new issue. It was one that I first encountered back in, I think, 1978, when the Department of Social Welfare was implementing its automated eligibility system for benefit programs. And there were contractors and state employees working on that whole IT initiative. So it's something that has been very much a part of discussion. It is obviously of concern when you have individuals that are compensated at different rates. But to add 13,000 grants and not understand what that impact would be, or whether those service delivery entities can actually meet the requirements that would be required, we thought needed more time and attention before we move forward. So it's with that background and that discussion that your Appropriations Committee is offering this substitute amendment to S96. And the vote in committee was 7-0-0. Thank you, Mr. President.
So now the question is, shall the report of the Committee on Government Operations be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I request a brief recess, please?
There will be a brief recess till the following gavel. I'm good. I have a little light on my shoulder. Senate will please come to order. The current question is, shall the report of the Committee on Government Operations be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just collecting my thoughts here. First of all, thank you to the Chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. She and I have had many discussions about this bill. She is always a wealth of history about state government and state employees and state finances, and I really appreciate hearing all that information. And I understand the amendment of the Appropriations Committee, and certainly I'm not standing up to speak against getting more information. I did want to provide a little bit of perspective. First of all, the Senate Government Operations Committee, this was a priority for most of the members of the committee, that we address the issue of increasing privatization of state services. And we heard some pretty compelling testimony from state employees, and many of us have heard from our constituents. In fact, just last week, I got a lengthy email with detailed information from one of my constituents who had received, frankly, horrific service from contract employees who work for Vermont Health Connect, and provided inaccurate information about getting information related to signing her daughter up for health insurance. So this is the kind of thing that we are seeing an increase of, as more and more state services are being privatized, sometimes to companies and workers outside of Vermont, and are not well trained in how state government works, and therefore are providing, frankly, bad service to our constituents. So this was the kind of issue that the Government Operations Committee was attempting to address. And I just want to be clear about one thing, is that we did not include pensions as part of the equity between the contracts and the state workers. Pensions were outside of the cost of providing pension benefits to state employees would not be part of what would need to be equivalent. While I appreciate definitely getting more information, and certainly the fiscal note nods to the fact that we need more information to understand the impact of it, there is, what the fiscal note does say is that there's not enough information to know how much this would cost. So it's trying to attach any dollar amount to it is really premature, and hopefully this study will get more information. I also just want to say that as we're taking up the next thing on our agenda, which is a constitutional amendment related to collective bargaining and labor, this was something that we, as the Government Operations Committee, felt was really important to recognize that our public employees and their association prioritize this and want to make sure that more state services are not privatized, and therefore avoiding the ability to be collectively organized. But with that, I appreciate the amendment from the Appropriations Committee, hope that we can get more information and move forward with something, maybe not exactly what we have in the bill, but something next session. We did just, the GovOps Committee just discussed, and we will have probably a small amendment on third reading, but as the chair, I'm supportive of moving forward with this, although not all of my committee members are. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I inquire of the presenter of the amendment?
The senator from Caledonia is interrogated as a reporter of the Appropriations Amendment.
Thank you for bringing forward this amendment. I have two questions. The first is, and I apologize if you said it and I didn't catch it, what was the witness list that the committee heard from?
We took testimony from the presenter of the bill, and then we had our usual committee discussion. We did receive some communication from the administration about what it would take, but mainly what we did is rely on the fiscal office to really do a fiscal note to determine what the cost might be. And when we started looking at the questions that really should be answered before making a decision, we felt that we really needed to understand fully what would be the impact. So I would say that to some extent, there's several members of the committee that had been in the legislature and on the committee actually had that historical base that probably was somewhat unique to the committee. But it was the Joint Fiscal Office, and I know that they had discussions with the administration as they attempted to provide us with this fiscal note, which was the basis for the decision that we made to move forward with an amendment.
I appreciate that remark. When we go to the bill on page 1922, I just want to point our attention to the section 1, subsection A. It lists that you will have in consultation JFO, the state auditor, and the Office of Attorney General. And the reason I asked about the witness list was the VSEA. I don't see them a part of or consulted in this amendment. And I'm wondering if you took that into consideration to have the VSEA be a part of this, or if that was a decision you made purposefully to exclude them.
We felt that that the administration had to really answer many of these questions. Obviously, when they come back with a study, that would be the appropriate time for more discussion. The VSEA represents obviously the state employees and the benefits and the requirements, or the requirements that were put in the bill as it was passed out of government operations. So to answer what would be the workload, what would be the contracts, what would be the mechanism, how you would gather the wage data, we felt was administrative and really had to be done to provide the fundamental information to move forward for any future action to implement provisions of the bill as it was introduced.
I appreciate that response, and based on it, it sounds like it was a deliberate decision to not include the VSEA in this, and I appreciate the remarks of the presenter of the amendment.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Government Operations be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Given the comments from the senators from Chittenden Central, Senator from Caledonia, and Senator from Madison, and my experience as a defense contractor, where I competed often against government agencies, the 20% difference, whether it's in the original language of the bill or in the amendment, is excessive, especially when a government entity can't find labor. When the only comment I want to make is that given the similarity, the similar benefits clause, and the recognition that there are really no pensions out there in the private sector, the 20% savings has to include the pension comparison between private and public. To do otherwise, we're simply not properly calculating the difference between the cost of the contracts, the cost of the services, and it takes the 20%, which is currently mandated in the language update in the law or in the bill, and then further increases the divide when you recognize the fact that pensions are, in fact, a real benefit to state employees. Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the report of the Committee on Government Operations be amended as offered by the Committee on Appropriations? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay.
Right.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and you amended the report of the Committee on Government Operations as offered by the Committee on Appropriations. The question now is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the Committee on Government Operations as amended? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. You have amended the bill as offered by the Committee on Appropriation, Government Operations as amended by the Committee on Appropriations. The question now is, shall the bill be read a third time? Are you ready for that question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and you have ordered third reading of S 96. We now have up for consideration Proposition 3. Proposition 3 can be found on page 1923 of today's calendar. We have for action a proposed amendment. I have a script to read, excuse me. We have for action a proposed amendment to the Vermont Constitution, Proposal 3, Declaration of Rights, Right to Collectively Bargain, introduced on May 2nd, 2023, and referred to the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, which reports that it is considered the same and recommends that the proposal of amendment be amended as reported on page 1923 of today's calendar, and when so amended, ought to be adopted. The 2023-2024 biennium is the second reading of a proposal of amendment. There is only a second reading this biennium. Third reading is during the 2025-2026 biennium. At second reading, the proposal of amendment is read in full per Senate Rule 77. The vote on any constitutional proposal of amendment and any amendment thereto is by yeas and nays by roll call per Senate Rule 77 and 80 and Vermont Constitutional Section 72, which is the requirement of a 2/3 vote of members. Votes on any amendment are by majority vote. The vote on adoption of the proposal requires 20 votes, 2/3 of the senators. Please listen to the reading of Proposal 3.
Proposal 3, Section 1, Purpose. This proposal would amend the Constitution of the State of Vermont to provide that citizens of the state have a right to collectively bargain. Section 2, Article 23 of Chapter 1 of the Vermont Constitution is added to read. Article 23, Right to collectively bargain. That employees have a right to organize or join a labor union for the purpose of collectively bargaining with their employer through an exclusive representative of their choosing for the purpose of negotiating wages, hours, and working conditions, and to protect their economic welfare and safety in the workplace, and that a labor organization chosen to represent a group of employees shall have the right to collect dues from its members. Therefore, no law shall be adopted that interferes with, negates, or diminishes the right of employees to collectively bargain with respect to wages, hours, and other terms and condition of employment and workplace safety, or that prohibits the application or execution of an agreement between an employer and a labor organization representing the employer's employees that requires membership in the labor organization as a condition of employment. Section 3, Effective Date. The amendment set forth in this proposal shall become a part of the Constitution of the State of Vermont on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November 2026, when ratified and adopted by the people of this state in accordance with the provisions of 17 VSA Chapter 32.
Now you've heard the reading of Proposal 3. For the report of economic development, housing, and general affairs, I'd like to recognize the senator from Wyndham, Senator Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, I rise to strongly encourage this body to support Proposal 3. Proposal 3 is on pages 1923 and through 1925 of today's calendar. I will speak to both the proposal as introduced and the version amended by the committee. This proposed amendment would enshrine in the Vermont Constitution the right of Vermont workers to organize and collectively bargain. Proposal 3 would ensure, to the extent possible under state law, that Vermonters' current labor rights, the laws that we have on our books now, are not eroded by future political action. This is not an imaginary threat. There is a growing movement in legislatures, the courts, and executive branches across the country which threatens the choices of workers. For those who may doubt that this attack on working people is real, I point to the many anti-labor legal challenges that have been brought forward in the last few years. Right now, there are serious efforts by large multinational corporations to gut the National Labor Relations Act, which since 1935 has protected the right of private workers to organize. Anti-labor efforts have also been advanced by U.S. Supreme Court decisions in 2014, 2018, 2021, and 23. These decisions weakened the legal foundation on which hardworking Americans establish and maintain strong employee unions. This movement to weaken unions has also been taken to state legislatures. We've been fortunate not to experience that yet here in Vermont, but it is happening elsewhere in New England and all across the country. There currently are 9 states that have enshrined in their constitutions the exact opposite of Proposal 3, reducing workers' rights and undermining union authority. Our goal with Proposal 3 is to ensure that whatever happens on a federal level or in other states, Vermont workers now and in the future will be able to exercise their right to organize. Similar to our Reproductive Freedom Amendment, which allows for choice but does not mandate what individuals may choose, Proposal 3 would not automatically make every worker in Vermont a member of a union. It would lock into place the processes that currently allow workers to choose whether or not to form a union, and would protect the authority of those chosen unions to effectively represent the interests of their members. If you generally support unions and workers' rights, then support for Proposal 3 will likely come easily to you. And that support will be reinforced by the testimony we received from nurses, construction workers, state employees, firefighters, laborers, and others who all described how union membership had a tremendously positive impact on their lives. Several members of our committee also spoke of the positive impact of unions on their own lives and their families. We heard stories from other states about the negative impact that erosion of these rights has had on workers. If you are concerned about how individual businesses and our overall economy might be impacted by supporting strong unions, I can offer reassuring evidence both from testimony and from academic research. We heard in testimony from the state treasurer and others that when the rights to organize and collectively bargain are supported, we see positive impacts, not just on the quality of life of workers, but also on the economic vitality and general health and welfare of their communities. This testimony is supported by the findings of a 2021 report by the Economic Policy Institute. Mr. President, may I read a single paragraph from these findings?
Without objection, you may.
Thank you. Quote, unions are not only good for workers, they're good for communities and for democracy. There is a correlation between higher levels of unionization in states and a range of economic, personal, and democratic well-being measures. In the same way, unions give workers a voice at work with a direct impact on wages and working conditions. The data suggests that unions also give workers a voice in shaping their communities. Where workers have this power, states have more equitable economic structures, social structures, and democracies, end quote. That speaks to the positive societal impact of strong employee unions. I'd like to offer my personal perspective on how unions are also beneficial to individual businesses. I have never been a member of a union, but I have many years of experience serving in management of multiple organizations. In some of these organizations, the employees were unionized, in others they were not. This experience, seeing the difference, strengthened my support for working people's right to organize. As a manager, I appreciated having the union as a partner. In this relationship, which is defined by clear roles and equitable processes through bargaining, we were able to work together to resolve conflicts and improve our workplaces. Now to the proposal itself. If we proceed with Proposal 3, we will not be venturing into unknown territory. Proposal 3 is almost identical to an Illinois amendment passed in 2022. As introduced, the Vermont amendment contained the following language, and you can see this on the 5th line. If you look on page 1924 with the language as introduced, it starts on the 5th line of section 2. There's a clause that says, and that a labor union chosen to represent a group of employees shall have the right to collect dues from its members. Our committee learned that this language could be challenged as unconstitutional compelled speech, so we removed it from proposal 3. With that deletion, our proposed amendment is now essentially the same as the one that was adopted in Illinois, which has withstood legal challenge. Our committee heard compelling testimony of witnesses from Illinois. The Illinois amendment followed the election of a governor who made it his mission to roll back protections for labor organizations and the workers they represent. He threw the state into chaos, and it was that chaos that compelled a bipartisan majority to pass their amendment. The amendment has restored stability to labor organizing and representation in Illinois with no negative economic impact. Mr. President, may I quote from the testimony of Sean Stott, who is a representative of a 50,000 member labor organization who worked closely on Illinois' constitutional amendment.
Without objection, you may.
Here's what Mr. Stott stated in testimony to our committee. Quote, "It has been 15 months since the Workers' Right Amendment has become part of the Illinois Constitution, and none of the criticisms of its opponents have come to bear. Workers have not been automatically admitted into unions. I've spoken to a representative of our state's labor board, and organizing among state and local government employees has been no more robust than before the passage of the Workers' Rights Amendment. And workers who did not previously have the right to organize under state law were not automatically granted that right. Businesses have not avoided Illinois. In fact, businesses, large and small, continue to locate in Illinois. The most notable examples being 2 private sector investments totaling nearly $7 billion that will create more than 5,000 jobs." End quote. The harms that were predicted with the passage of the Illinois amendment have not come to fruition. It is important to note that in Vermont, we have not even heard such opposition. During the many weeks in which we considered this proposal in committee, no organizations came out against it. Several business organizations were invited to testify, but declined that invitation and chose to stay neutral on the question. The Associated General Contractors did choose to testify. They are neutral on the question and agree that this will simply codify the status quo. They said that when they asked their national legal counsel about proposal 3, the response from their attorney was, "It's fine." I am honored to report the unanimous 5-0-0 bipartisan approval of this proposal in your Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs Committee. I would now like to walk through the specific provisions of the amendment, starting on page 1924. As you heard, section 1 purpose. This proposal would amend the Constitution of the state of Vermont to provide that citizens of the state have a right to collectively bargain. Section 2, it adds Article 23, the right to collectively bargain, to the Vermont Constitution. What this would do would provide that employees have a right to form or join a union for the purpose of collectively bargaining with their employer. It would prohibit the adoption of laws that interfere with or diminish an employee's right to collectively bargain. And it would also prohibit the adoption of laws which work to undermine the strength of labor organizations. It would confirm that private sector unions and employers can agree to require union membership as a condition of employment, and this is pursuant to the provisions of the National Labor Relations Act. Public sector employees cannot be required to join a union or pay an agency fee under U.S. Supreme Court precedent, and this proposal would not change that. Section 3 is the effective date. The amendment will take effect in November 2026 if it passes both chambers of the General Assembly in both this biennium and the next, and is ratified by Vermont voters in the 2026 general election. our witness list is extensive but worthy of sharing. Matthew Finken, Professor of Law, Program in Comparative Labor and Employment Law and Policy at the Illinois College of Law. Elizabeth Medina, Executive Director, Vermont Labor Council. David Mickenberg, Working Vermont. Senator Hashim, who was the sponsor. Sean Stott, Director of Government Affairs, Laborers International Union of North America Midwest Region. Elena Bender, Vice President, United Nurses and Professionals. Jocelyn Jones, Attorney, Siegel Reutman. Alan Raff, New Hampshire State Director of the Unity Table, which is a group of unions. Amy Town, President, Vermont State Employees Association. Christopher Doobie, President, Professional Firefighters of Vermont. Heather Reamer, Executive Director, AFT Vermont. Larry Moquin, Field Supervisor, Laborers Local 668 of the Building and Construction Trades. Kim Hokinson, Regional Manager, North Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters. Jean Goodwin, Retired Union Carpenter. Michael Pichek, Vermont State Treasurer. Matt Musgrave, Government Affairs Director, Associated General Contractors of Vermont. Peter Teachout, Professor, Vermont Law School. And Damian Leonard, Legislative Counsel. I am so proud to be able to report and to support Proposal 3. And on behalf of your Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs Committee, I ask for the Senate support.
So the question is, shall the proposal of Amendment 3 be amended as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Washington.
Point of information, Mr. President, when I heard, we're not going to read the amendment as we read the proposal by Rule 77.
It's Rule 77 requires the original proposal to be read. So no, but anybody could read it if they choose to.
Without objection. Okay, I just have a question. When I heard the Assistant Secretary read the proposal, I was following along and I thought I heard labor union in the first instance of labor organization. I assume there's two things. Just wanted to clarify this by important information. When we're voting on something like this, where that's read aloud, we're voting on the words in the calendar, not if something was said differently. And that is my own question. Just like that it's organization, there's a person, there's a reason we use organization, not union, even though the reporter used union, and it is organization, not union in that first instance.
Would you like to interrogate somebody to ask that question, or is that a point of order you're asking me
Here's
to
my point of
answer?
information. Are we voting on the words in the calendar or what was read?
The words in the calendar are the official language of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr.
The question is, shall proposal of Amendment 3 be amended as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs as found in the calendar on page 1924? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to thank your Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs, and particularly the reporter, who I'm also very proud of. As you heard, this was a unanimous vote in our committee, and we don't take that lightly. I think for most of American history, unions and labor have been seen across the political spectrum as a way for people to gain access to the middle class, and particularly were entities that helped women and people of color gain footholds in industries and sectors that had been previously closed off to them, with good paying jobs with benefits. You also heard that unions are under attack in the country, in our courts, in many states. We are looking at 9 states that have already passed misnamed right to work legislation that diminishes the power of collective bargaining and goes to the heart of attacking unions and their right to organize. Many of the labor organizations that you heard represented in the witness list have had to, in the same timeframe, go across the river to New Hampshire to battle an amendment that would make from New Hampshire a so-called right to work state. So as you heard, this is not an imaginary threat. And when we look at not just the threat to unions, but the real benefit unions provide in stabilizing the middle class, I know that for many of us and for, across different parties and beliefs, we don't necessarily like to tinker with a system, even if we believe that it's rigged against the average working person. We tend to be very circumspect about whether or not we're going to raise the minimum wage as government. We look at things like income inequality that is on the rise, and it's a top priority for many of us, but there are not that many pieces of legislation that we can pass that actually close that gap sufficiently. Helping unions remain strong and vital, helping them fight for workers to receive a decent wage, decent benefits, and a voice so that they can provide quality care to folks is one of the main ways that we do that. So as with past labor bills, I would posit to this esteemed body that this is a workforce development bill just as much as a union organizing and labor bill. When we looked at the wage data from this past year, we in our committee really care about the average wage in the state, whether or not we influence that through direct policy. And we saw that wages jumped quite a bit this year. Instead of a usual 40 to 50 cent increase year over year, this past year it was $1 increase. And some might just say we have a tight labor market and wages are going up. But when I look back on this past year, we had a union organizing effort in the largest employer in the state of Vermont, the UVM Medical Center, and it brought up the wages of those who were the least compensated and had the least voice, generally a group of women and new Americans who work in environmental services. And I'd just like to end by saying, many folks, hopefully everybody in this chamber remembers that I was gone for the end of last session. And I spent 4.5 weeks with a difficult birth process for Mira in the hospital. And the whole point of my stay was to try and give Mira more time to grow while fighting infection. There was absolutely no one more important to that process than the custodial services team that took care of me. And there was a woman named Andrea Oberg who would come in every day, ask when I was going to be out with friends or if there was someone coming to visit, when she could clean the room thoroughly. And every day she would say, "It's an honor to be part of your care team." And I knew when I left the hospital and this union organizing effort was underway that she still made somewhere in the ballpark of $14 to $15 an hour, doing some of the most important work that you can do in the hospital to keep people safe and healthy. And after that union organizing effort took place and the first collective bargaining session was completed, all of those workers are now paid a floor of $20 an hour. When I think of stabilizing Vermonters and giving them a wage that takes them off of our state benefits and helps give them a solid foundation to stabilize their family, to enter the middle class, that's what this amendment is all about. And that's what we're voting on here today. And so I ask that when the vote is taken, it be taken by roll, Mr. President.
The center has requested that it is actually the standard procedure
Right.
That the amendments as well as the final vote are taken by roll. The question is, shall the proposal of Amendment 3 be amended as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs? Are you ready for the question? If so, the secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Point of information.
Senator, let me check with you. What is your point of information?
I'm just wondering, is this the first of two remaining votes?
Correct. So there are two votes. This vote is a majority vote. To amend the proposal of the Constitution requires a majority. The second vote would be to order third reading, and that would be the 2/3 of the
Understood.
body.
I was just a bit confused by the roll call for this next vote, and I'm wondering if
So-
that's the intention of the proposer of that.
I'll answer that question. It is actually by Rule 77, as well as Rule 80, that every vote, all amendments and the final vote are by roll.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Ruth,
Yes?
Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Campion,
Yes.
Senator Chittenden.
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore,
Yes.
Senator Cummings.
Yes.
Senator Dooley,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Harrison,
Yes.
Senator Hashim,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Lyon,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Mazza, Senator McCormack,
Yes.
Senator Norris,
Yes.
Senator Pershling,
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator Bihowski,
Yes.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Weeks,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Williams,
Yes.
Senator Renner,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 29, those voting nay, 0, and you have amended the proposal of amendment. The question now is, shall the Senate adopt the third proposal of amendment to the Constitution of Vermont as amended, as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and request the concurrence of the House? Senator from Rutland.
Thank you, Mr. President. May I interrogate the reporter of the amendment?
The senator from Wyndham is interrogated as a reporter of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just for clarification, in section 2, the last sentence, there's a language about required membership, but in your floor speech, there was some delineation between whether the union was a public unionized organization or a private unionized organization. I'm wondering if the senator or the reporter could clarify.
Mr. President, thank you for the question. A union formed as part of a private organization actually has more options than public union, or let me start again. Unions of public employees are limited on what they can require because of their employer being a government. And so free speech comes into play. And they cannot be compelled to support a union. And then more recently, there was a Supreme Court decision that said they cannot even be compelled to pay an agency fee, which is a fee that is used for the union to administer the union, not to do anything political.
I thank the reporter from Windsor. I do have one further question, or one further comment that when the proposal moves to third reading, or certainly when it moves to the public, that the distinction between private and public unionization requirement be very clear. It's currently contained in a very lengthy legalized sentence, which is going to hit a number of speed bumps when we all try to explain this to our constituents. But that's my only recommendation. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank the reporter.
Given the remarks that just occurred, I'd just like to clarify the process for a moment. With a constitutional amendment, after today's vote, if this were to succeed, there would be no further opportunities for amendment to the language, except for one slight provision, which would be a reconsideration of the vote, in which case we would wait a day and we would retake up the vote for a third reading. So I just want to clarify that, given the remarks that were just made. Senator from Bennington.
Thank you, Mr. President. In my youth, I was a member of two separate, and my youth was under 30, by the way.
Just a few years ago.
I was a member of two different unions, one, the Building and Construction Trades Union, and the other, the VSEA. Seems to me the big difference between those two unions when I wasn't at the same time, what was the right to strike. We've seen cases in other states where teachers' unions and others have gone out on strike. So may I inquire the reporter of the amendment?
The senator
Or
from,
the,
yeah, the amendment and the amendment. It's a little awkward. But yes, the senator from Wyndham.
Mr. President, I'm just want to make sure that I fully understand that the right to strike does not exist for the public employees by passing this proposal.
Mr. President, the right to strike would not be changed by passing this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The question is, shall the Senate adopt the third proposal of amendment to the Constitution of Vermont as amended, as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and request the concurrence of the House? Are you ready for the question? Senator from Madison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise in support of the work of the Committee of Economic Development and supporting the amendment. It's, I think, pretty easy to imagine, given how few of our constituents are currently in unions, that this may seem like work on the side or not exactly relevant to their immediate lives. But the long history of labor has helped create work conditions, hours, benefits, and a vast array of conditions that flow over to all of us who may be in non-union positions. And I think it's easy to underestimate the contribution they've made to the health and well-being of our communities at large.
Question is, shall the Senate adopt the third proposal of amendment to the Constitution of Vermont as amended, as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and request the concurrence of the House? Are you ready for the question, Senator from Chittenden Central?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think one question that some people listening in might have is, why would Vermont need this protection, given that we're a strong labor state? And for those people, I would just offer one word, and that is Wisconsin. So if you remember, Wisconsin for decades was a state with a storied labor history. People like Paul Wellstone had moved that state in ways that were very, very productive for the middle class there. In 2011, Scott Walker was elected governor, and it took about 3 years to dismantle the majority of those protections. So when I look at this particular amendment, I look on it very much as I did the amendment we made to the Constitution in terms of reproductive rights. We are strengthening what we have, and we're protecting it from going away, which can happen in the legislative blink of an eye. And those people in Wisconsin can testify to that. So with that, Mr. President, I thank the committee and the original sponsor, Senator Hashim.
Question is, shall the Senate adopt the third proposal of amendment to the Constitution of Vermont as amended, as recommended by the Committee on Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs, and request concurrence of the House? Are you ready for the question? If so, the Secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru,
Yes.
Senator Bray,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Campion,
Yes.
Senator Chipman,
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore, Yes. Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Bueller,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Harrison,
Yes.
Senator Hashim,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls,
Yes.
Senator Kitchell, Senator Lyon,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Mazza, Senator McCormack,
Yes.
Senator Norris,
Yes.
Senator Pershling,
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Starr,
Yes.
Senator Buhowski,
Yes.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Weeks,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator White,
Yes.
Senator Williams,
Yes.
Senator Renner,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 29, those voting nay, 0. 2/3 of total senators being 20 votes required. You have adopted the third proposal of amendment as amended to the Constitution of Vermont and request the concurrence of the House. That now brings us to S-259, which appears on the calendar on page 1925. Third reading was ordered, and I believe there is an amendment being offered that will be handed out if the senator from Caledonia wants to offer the amendment. Unless the senator from, because it doesn't happen if somebody doesn't stand up. Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, during the weekend, we heard from the auditor's office, we being Senator from Caledonia and myself, that they would like to see a change in this language to allow the auditor to be reimbursed from the climate superfund cost program for any costs associated with hiring technical expertise necessary to complete the audits required under the section. And so you have the First Amendment, and the Second Amendment further says the program, including the cost of the state audit associated with hiring technical expertise to complete audits required under this section. So, Mr. President, in emails back and forth with Ledge Council as well as with the auditor's office and the senator from Caledonia, we offer this amendment. I think it's rather technical, just basically saying the auditor can get reimbursed for any costs associated with the work that's required under the Climate Superfund Act.
Question is, shall the bill be amended as offered by the senators from Caledonia and Bennington? Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it. You have further amended the bill as offered by senators from Caledonia and Bennington. Are there any further amendments before third reading? Seeing none, please listen to the third reading of the bill.
S-259, an act relating to climate change cost recovery.
Now you've heard the third reading of the bill. The question is, shall the bill pass? Are you ready for the question? Roll call has been requested. I believe the senator from Washington was slightly ahead of the senator from Wyndham. Are you ready for the question? If so, the secretary shall commence to call the roll.
Senator Baru,
Yes.
Senator Gray,
Yes.
Senator Brock,
Yes.
Senator Campion,
Yes.
Senator Chittenden,
Yes.
Senator Clarkson,
Yes.
Senator Collmore,
Yes.
Senator Cummings,
Yes.
Senator Yulee,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Harrison,
Yes.
Senator Hashim,
Yes.
Senator Ingalls,
No.
Senator Kitchell,
Yes.
Senator Lyons,
Yes.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator Mazza, Senator McCormack,
Yes.
Senator Norris,
Yes.
Senator Kirschler,
Yes.
Senator Ron Hinsdale,
Yes.
Senator Sears,
Yes.
Senator Scar,
Yes.
Senator Mahowski,
Yes.
Senator Watson,
Yes.
Senator Weeks,
No.
Senator Weston,
Yes.
Senator White,
Yes, with explanation.
Senator Williams,
No.
Senator Renner,
Yes.
Senator Mazza,
Please listen to the results of your vote. Those voting yea, 26, those voting nay, 3. And you have passed S 259. Now for the explanation of vote, the senator from Windsor.
I'm proud to vote yes today to respond to the greatest overarching existential threat of our time.
Senator from Chittenden Central. Chittenden Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just want to congratulate the body on clearing the calendar from crossover. That was very smoothly accomplished, and I appreciate the work. With that said, Mr. President, I would move that the Senate stand in adjournment until 1 p.m. Wednesday, April 3rd.
Are there any announcements? Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Finance will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Addison.
Mr. President, Senate Natural Resources and Energy has witnesses waiting, so that people can meet as soon as possible. Thank you.
Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Senate Health and Welfare will meet 5 minutes after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Addison.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Government Operations will meet at 1:30.
Senator from Orleans.
Senate Ag will meet soon after adjournment.
Senator from Chittenden Southeast.
Mr. President, Senate Economic Development will meet as soon as possible after the fall of the gavel.
Senator from Bennington.
Mr. President, Senate Education will meet at 1:15.
Senator from Windsor.
Thank you. The Senate Democratic Caucus will join the press conference at 12:15. We encourage you to join the press conference which will be celebrating some of our accomplishments in the first half of this session. 12:15 in the Cedar Creek Room. We encourage you to join the presentation and the press conference. Thanks.
Senator from Essex.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate institutions will meet today at 1:15.
Senator from Washington.
Senate Transportation will be meeting 5 minutes after the call. Thank you.
Senator from Windsor, do you have any update regarding tonight's farmer, or that's tomorrow? My apologies, but I thought there might be an update depending on weather, but I could be wrong.
We will be making the call as soon as we get off the floor.
Okay, then. Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the senator from Chittenden Central has moved that the Senate now stand adjournment until Wednesday, April 3rd at 1 p.m. Are you ready for the question? If so, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed indicate by saying nay. The ayes have it, and the Senate will stand adjourned until Wednesday, April 3rd at 1 p.m.